Happy Thursday. It was the best of times. Well, and frankly, it was also the best of times. It was the 80s. We're going to revisit that time period that we all hold so dear. Let's re-cherish some of the memories that we cherish daily because, let's face it, we're stuck in an unending hell of unoriginality that we call the present. So let's go ahead and hop in that Wayback Machine to a time when things are not only simpler, but more plastic, more Alf, more Gizmo. The 1980s. I love the 80s.
Parachute pants, bro.
Huh?
Parachute pants and moon boots.
Parachute pants and
You
moon
have
boots, bro.
got to absolutely love everything that represents the 80s. There is a constant pit in my stomach, a hole that only the 80s can fill. Honestly, I'm not happy with the present. Not like my present, but, like globally the present. And that has absolutely nothing to do with a global pandemic. It just has everything to do with the fact that we're not in the 80s any longer.
I don't think we're going live either.
Well, I'm pretty sure that we were going on Facebook.
No, I don't
We're
have
on Facebook.
anything.
Don't have anything there?
I'm
No.
watching it.
Yeah.
Rob's watching it. Jeez, Mark, why don't you disrupt the whole show with fake news?
Totally did that.
Screeching fucking halt.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm watching for the YouTube link.
Did you hear the gears grind on that one?
I did. I saw the sparks coming off the tires.
After such a fabulous introduction, Mark just shits the proverbial bed. Congratulations,
Well,
Mark.
if they launched on
Speaking of the
everything,
80s, I used to work with this guy, and one of his famous sayings was he was so unlucky that if it was raining tits, he'd open his mouth and a cock would fall in. Way to go, Mark.
I'm sorry. It's this wonderful weather must have melted my brain.
Shut up, dickhead. Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? Oh, look at that 80s reference. Stolen right from Marty McFly.
We'll dig deep tonight. We'll make sure we do. So how's everybody doing? How was your week? Before we get into a simpler time, a calmer time, a time where landfills were filled with E.T. Atari games. The 80s.
Thousands of them.
Well, that was like an urban legend for the longest time. Has anybody seen the documentary on that? It's pretty
Yes,
fantastic.
it is. It is indeed true.
Huh?
It is indeed true.
It is indeed true. They had such a surplus of that shit-tastic game that they had no choice but to bury it deep in the belly of the earth.
Like Newark, right?
Such as Newark, New Jersey.
I tried so hard to play that thing, and it was so bad. So bad.
For those of you who have never had the pleasure of flying into the Newark International Airport, the first thing you'll see at any of the little gift stores is shirts that say quite simply New Jersey, where the weak are killed and eaten.
This is a true statement.
So how was everybody doing? How's your week been?
I'm excited to have this fun time.
Mine's been pretty good. Pretty laid back week this week.
Pretty laid back?
Yeah.
I thought most of your weeks were pretty laid back, Mark. Like,
This is
what's the
true.
harsh comparison? Like a 72-degree day to a 68-degree day where things just start
Yeah,
falling apart?
Yeah, or just like rough days at work. It happens.
Mark's existential nightmare of things falling
He
below
actually has
70
to
degrees.
work at work.
Well, I'm actually I'm not having a bad week. I wouldn't say I'm having a great week, but I'm not having a bad week, and then I'm looking forward to next week. So Hannibal, Missouri has a Comic-Con that I'll be going to. It's nice and small, but like Ming from Comic Book Men, the Kevin Smith show will be there, and of course toys, which is going to be my focus tonight, because the 80s was just a glorious time in the age of plastic. Most certainly a huge, huge benchmark decade for toys.
Well, not just
it's between He-Man, G.I. Joe, and Transformers. And then you had like the off stuff like Mask and GoBots, and they were the Kmart of Transformers. And what was the other ones I had? I had these ones that were called Centurions.
Oh
They had
yeah,
these big weapons that could like stick to the side. And what me and my brother would do is we'd
it
take
was
our
Ace
Lincoln.
McCloud.
Yes.
Ace McCloud in the Centurions.
Yes, and we would take the Lincoln Logs and build a little houses, and then we'd take those weapons and shoot them from about 3 feet away, and try to destroy each other's cabins with them. It was great.
It's good that wanton destruction. We sort of how we base the replayability of our toys from the '80s, but we had great toys, and we'll obviously.
Well, who didn't cut Stretch Armstrong open?
Oh yeah,
I never had a Stretch Armstrong.
right. Well, I mean,
We had a Slinky, but I straightened it.
well,
Alrighty,
I mean, it was
John.
still a wonderful toy. Basically, just had like an abortion machine. Line them on up. We've got 2-for-1 specials. I uncoiled my Slinky, and
What's wrong with
viewership
you?
just plummeted.
Yep. Here come the letters.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, even walking down, if you were to go into any big box retail store now, you're gonna go into Target, go into Walmart. I mean, do we even have any Kmart's left?
I think there's one out here around about 4 miles from me.
There's nothing left out here as far as Kmart goes. Hell, Sears has even gone out here.
Oh yeah.
Sears is dead.
Strangely enough, we
Yeah.
we still have a Sears out here.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought
Well,
they-
it's a Chicago company.
Yep, Sears
I
Roebuck.
thought they were completely done, but I guess not.
So if you walk down a modern toy aisle, this is just how long and how heavily the toys of the 80s have resonated with us. You will still see Transformers. You will see new versions of G.I. Joe figures. You will see the new retro with modern playability He-Man figures. So what we've established is that we really haven't had any good ideas since the 80s.
Shit, Rubik's Cube.
Oh
bro.
yeah.
Huh?
Which I should break it out. I have a Le Marchand's Lament from the Hellraiser series, but as a Rubik's Cube, which is pretty awesome. By the way, there's no way to win. Literally.
I have a number of friends that
We'll
are
tear your stickers
like
apart.
masters of the Rubik's Cube. Like they do that whole, and it's done. And it was like, how the hell did you do that?
Yeah, not me. Again, it was just peeling off the stickers.
I would take it apart and reconstruct it.
Mine was always perfect because I never took it out of the package.
It's the way to do it, Rob.
It was more just looking at it fondly and the dreams of
You never
the
try.
dreams of what could be, right?
Right.
As opposed to
It's
to,
like,
to the failures of what probably might happen.
dude, you buy it perfect. Why fuck with it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
True.
Right.
I mean, it is a game meant to play with your hands.
Really?
But let's keep it in the package. Why not?
Mom said you'll go blind.
Well, that's a different
Might be
kind
wearing
of
glasses.
package entirely.
Oh boy.
So I
There's the ship.
So I absolutely love the 80s. There's no denying that, a part of me is still there, will always be there. I am not a whole person, unfortunately, because of the 80s. So I'm just gonna take the first leap, okay? I'm gonna take the first leap into the 80s, and I'm gonna and
Alright.
it's gonna be a comparison of how shitty things are today and how wonderful they were in the 80s. Not that I'm gonna base the whole night around it, but this is a conversation that I had the other day, which is very much 80s centric. Okay, what have we lost in our current decade that we'll probably never see again? I don't think we've had it now for probably this decade or the past decade that was such a staple of the 80s. Soundtracks. Movie
Yeah.
soundtracks. You could almost gauge the popularity of a movie based on its soundtrack counterpart, and you could almost base the popularity of a soundtrack based on the movie it was attached to, right? I mean, that was a huge thing in the 80s.
Kenny Loggins made a killing.
Yeah, he did.
That fucker was on everything. If there was a movie and he wasn't on the soundtrack, it's only because he was on vacation that week.
It's exactly what it was. Yeah. Or they were priming it for a volume 2. Because remember, that would happen too in the 80s. If a soundtrack really took off and it had a wealth of material, you might see a second volume of volume 2 of those popular songs.
It was the 80s movie classic too. Don't you forget about me.
And we also had huge bands. We're talking enormous, huge,
There is no such thing as arena rock anymore.
No, there isn't. But
I remember this. I'm older than you guys, obviously, but I remember going to see. It was at Giant Stadium in New Jersey, in East Rutherford.
Oh yeah.
All right. It was REM and the Smithereens.
Wow.
And it was like the craziest thing. I mean, like, I went to Monsters of Alternative Rock in the 80s.
Yeah.
No.
I was at Live Aid. I went to Live Aid. It's like, oh my God, like living in the New York City area back in the 80s, there was no shortage of amazing shows to go see.
Oh.
And like
you had like L'Amour with the thrash metal scene blowing up there in the 80s.
Oh, and like in Jersey, we had the China Club in Hackensack, just totally blowing up the metal scene at the China Club, and the Nook out in Hackettstown, and
Chattawa.
What's that?
Old Bridge.
Yep. Stone Pony down in Wildwood, down on the shore and all that. Oh my God. It was like, you're right though, that, we'll never have that kind of thing again where, I mean, now it's like, a super group concert is, I think we're going back to the state fair thing where it's like 10 bands, everybody plays 2 songs and runs away.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, not for nothing. I mean, I went to see, it was Bon Jovi, Winger, and Skid Row.
Oh yeah.
And all 3 bands did like an hour plus.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think the last sort of like arena quality show that I saw that honestly reminded me of the 80s, even though it was this amalgamation of 80s and 90s, was when I saw Velvet Revolver. And we're talking, and they headlined with an almost 2 hour and 45-minute set, which was absolutely insane. But now when you talk about headliners, I mean, aside from, let's face it, as far as those, like you're talking about, Mark, this idea of arena rock is pretty much dead. The only thing that we really have as far as these huge arena shows is bringing back 80s bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Def Leppard. Def Leppard could do an arena show, but that's probably about it.
The people that
and if it was Def Leppard, you'd probably get
like Winger,
Great White,
one of the versions of Great White, maybe Rat if they get back together.
Queensryche, whichever of the 4 versions of Queensryche there are now.
No, there's only one now, and then Jeff Tate's got his own thing. I think it's like Jeff Tate's Operation Mindcrime or something.
Yeah, because of the suit of the name
and all that silliness.
But yeah, I mean, we're just not going to see that. And I think one of the reasons why is also because, I mean, let's face it, this idea of rock and roll, of bands and iterations of a certain sound, right, is dead. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's dead. Good luck finding a modern rock song on the radio. Good luck finding a modern pop song on the radio. Top 40s radio is now almost solely reserved for hip hop, rap, and country. That's the strange sort of fixture of music now are those three genres.
They don't
Or
even
the next one
the
named
rock-
girl.
they don't even
Yeah.
air the rock part of the Grammys anymore. It's all like internet only.
Yeah, and it's
And Jethro Tull was that.
and Jethro Tull just comes and robs everybody.
I got a quick 80s like stadium anthem moment for you. As you two know, and many people that know me know, I spent a good deal of the late 80s exercising my elbow, bringing 12
Rob,
ounces to
Yes,
my lips.
yeah.
That's not in that kind of show. We're not Playboy Radio, all right?
And
That's the show.
we went and saw The Who,
Not that kind of
Okay.
tennis elbow.
and we were, I mean, I was 3 sheets to the 3rd sheet from the wind. And they start doing, Love Rain on Me, right?
Mhm.
And in the middle of the song, where Daltrey belts out that Love
Mhm.
Rain on Me, they had rigged up sprinklers in the crowd. And when he hits that, they turn the sprinklers on, right? I was so smashed. I'm like, dude, Daltrey made it rain. But it was like, those are the moments that, like, oh, I remember going to see Yes in the Round at Madison Square Garden. I saw Rush 2 of the 3 sold out nights at Radio City Music Hall. It's amazing. You guys grew up in the Midwest near
Yeah.
Chicago, right? So you
Oh.
had that
Not near Chicago, but
Not near enough.
close
yeah.
enough that you had those. You had those runs of big name concerts
yeah.
coming through. Remember Alice Cooper and the Caravan of Nightmares?
Oh yeah.
And oh God, there were so many great shows in the 80s like that.
Well, and even going into, and we won't go into the 90s, but even sort of that hinge era of like 97 to 87 to 92, we still had these huge bands. They were still sort of riding out the waves from the mid to late 90s, and this again was still tons of anthem rock, tons of stadium rock, tons of arena rock. These were enormous bands. There was not going to be an empty seat at any one of these concerts. And these bands not only
yeah.
were lending themselves to soundtracks, they were writing songs for specific movies, which is like mind-blowing now. I mean, we have what, Disney? I think, and do we even have artists that are lending themselves to Disney movies, or is that a thing of the past?
Bro.
I think
Oh,
there's
God.
Nobody.
But that's, I think, sort of what we're dealing with, is that they're not really taking celebrated artists, but they're taking artists, having them write songs. But we're not getting anything like those powerhouse soundtracks. I mean, was there, and again, whether you loved it or hated it, was there a single track off of the Dirty Dancing soundtrack that did not get airplay? That whole soundtrack was on maximum rotation for like one full summer, if not more.
Oh, the Iron Eagle soundtrack. Holy crap.
The Top Gun soundtrack. I mean, we have these iconic soundtracks. I don't think we're ever going to see that again.
The Footloose
Footloose.
soundtrack.
Every song was on maximum rotation. It was heavy rotation. Everything from the Footloose soundtrack.
Do you remember the movie? Oh God, it was just on the tip of my tongue. Where Elf and Lane Meyer he skis the K-12. What the hell's
Better
the name
Off
of the movie?
Dead.
Better Off Dead.
Yeah.
Van Halen.
Hey, Oscar
In the middle
Mayer.
of the movie, in the middle of the movie, you get a claymation hamburger.
Everybody wants
The
them.
Van Halen, yeah,
I mean,
amazing.
we don't see any of that anymore. God, just thinking about Better Off Dead, what a fantastic movie. And I mean, for the most part, that was, that was an animator, strangely enough, that made that, One Crazy Summer, and I think another movie. Yeah, Savage Steve Holland. And he still animates today. Like, he's still largely in cartoons. But yeah, I mean, he had that God, it was a great formula that I had because first of all, John Cusack. I mean, we all love John Cusack. So talking about Chicago, John Cusack sort of
Yeah.
represents Chicago here for us. But yeah, Better Off Dead, Lane Meyer. I mean, it's just
He keeps putting his
yeah.
testicles all over me. His what? His testicles. Tentacles.
Tentacles.
NT.
Yeah.
And then you had like Back to School where Oingo Boingo shows up in the movie, he plays a song,
Yeah.
Oh,
and then Oingo Boingo doing weird science. That was
Again,
great
a
stuff.
title track of a soundtrack that was basically matched for the movie itself. All of these, even the Ghostbusters soundtrack. I mean, look
Yeah.
how iconic that song was.
I mean, granted, there's a whole lawsuit from Huey Lewis about that, but
we just had, I think we had, and of course people are going to call it the era of excess, and I'm fine with that because it really was, but I think that it's still so much in the public consciousness, and we're still sort of hearkening back to the glory days of the 80s, that the comparison is just, it's bold between sort of what we experience today, the way that media influenced us today versus the way that influenced us in the 80s. I mean, God, just the soundtracks alone. And that was the conversation that I had the other day, was we're not going to see that again, especially because we've made such a shift in music. I mean, the music scene is so different that I don't think we hardly even have, do we have any like, reverent love songs? We don't, don't even really have ballads anymore, do we? I think country music comes the closest.
music has kind of like taken that whole thing. But you mentioned earlier that hinge period between like 87 to like 92. But did you realize that Nirvana's Nevermind released exactly 1 week after Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 1 and 2?
I mean, and that's crazy, right? It's crazy to think that we solidly had these two extremely influential rock genres that undoubtedly started competing. I mean, really started competing.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw a lot of the hair metal, the glam metal bands, unfortunately, well, the whole grunge scene and like alternative rock just sort of washed over everything that we had. And I mean, not that I didn't enjoy some things we had.
As a musician too, back in that time, I mean, like the musicians that were in those bands, I look back at the guitar players from like the 80s, Nuno Bettencourt, Eddie Van Halen, Yngwie Malmsteen,
even like Robin Crosby from Rat.
You had Warren DeMartini from Rat. You had George Lynch.
Eddie Van Halen.
You had like every single one of these bands.
Vinnie Vincent. We had
the performer,
huge guitar players,
and Michelangelo, Nitro,
Red Beach, Snake Sabo and Skid Row. And I mean, all these guys were just like, it wasn't good enough to be a good player. You had to be
virtuoso.
You had to be a knockout. Key Marcello in Europe. I mean, all these bands, even some of the crappy Europe. I mean, they had a couple of good songs, but shit, I remember they opened for who was it? I was so blown away because Key Marcello did Flight of the Bumblebees live. I was like, holy crap, dude. I mean, these were like, now we're like, we get Beyonce and everybody's like, oh my God, Beyonce's the most decorated Grammy musician ever. She has 16 producers and 5 people write a song for her.
And we had next level.
I don't get that.
And the lyrics are like, oh baby, baby.
And I'm not taking anything away from her. She can dance, she can sing, she's got talent, but she's not a virtuoso. Look at Prince. Holy shit, you want to talk about virtuoso? I was fortunate enough to see Prince back in the 80s. I never bought one of his records. It was not one of my like go-to music genres. But I mean, I show up, I'm the only guy in a, leather jacket, and the back had the Number of the Beast album cover painted on it, and I'm like, walking in there, like, and everybody's, staring at me. But 2.5 hours of a Prince concert where the guy never stood still, never stopped dancing, never stopped playing. Incredible musician. And I was blown away. Where is the next Prince? Who's going to be the next Prince? Who's
But
going to
those
be
aren't
that
the acts that
guy?
we're fostering,
Because
and that I think is why we're seeing the end of that era, because and a lot of it I think is largely due to this idea of instant stardom with the internet. This idea of sort of personalities with the internet is that what we're not getting is we're not getting 13-year-old kids in their garage, popping on an album and going, how do I do that? What they're doing is they're looking at 30-second clips on YouTube and going, I can already do that. So there's not this idea of, I mean, we don't have rock gods. We had rock gods back then. I remember getting the tablature for Steve Vai's Passion and Warfare for Christmas. And right there deciding that I was going to become an art major because fuck all that. And there was no way it was going to happen.
That was like the biggest waste of money ever. You can't keep up with that.
It was.
So-
I have a food allergy, right? I can't eat coconut, right? So now that would be like somebody giving me a case of Almond Joy going, have at it, buddy. It was the same as just like, I got to find a big enough toilet for this book because the only way it's going to help me is if I find another use for it completely. I was just hoping that we'd lose power and have to burn it, just so that I could keep warm because I was never going to figure that fucking book out, ever.
How about, you throw Steve Vai out there, dude. Not for nothing, the movie Crossroads with Ralph Macchio, the movie sucked. But that last
Steve Vai.
20 minutes of, oh my God. I mean, just great stuff. I mean, and then, David Lee Roth leaves Van Halen and was like, oh, what the hell's he going to do now? And then he hooks up with Billy Sheehan, Bizanet on drums, and Steve Vai. You're like, oh, I think he landed on his feet. I think he did okay.
He's David Lee Roth is one of those guys that always ends up with like the most talented people around him.
Oh, and he's responsible for one of my 2 favorite quotes ever in music history.
Oh boy.
And David Lee Roth's dad, I guess, was some kind of like huge heart surgeon out in California, like big deal heart surgeon guy. And his family had lots of money. And this guy's interviewing him. He's like, well, why do you do this, Dave? You don't need the money. And, is it just for the girls? And he goes, money can't buy you happiness. And, David Lee Roth looks at him and goes, yeah, but you can dock your yacht and walk on over to happiness anytime you want. One of the best quotes ever in rock and roll.
And that's why you never say you can't buy happiness to poor people.
But
that's like saying, hey, you know what I hate? I hate original recipe chicken to a starving person. It's like, fuck this original recipe. I want extra crispy. Don't even say that. But yeah, we're not getting the kind of personalities that we get. I mean, yeah, we did have larger than life personalities. Yeah, we did have, I mean, they're rock and roll stars. They're going to be in trouble with the law. They're going to be controversial. They're going to throw fucking lawn chairs, out hotel windows. They're going to be rowdy. They're going to be rebellious. That was that rock and roll lifestyle. But it most of the time, if you look at these people now, like hidden within a lot of these rock stars were extremely intelligent and extremely versatile people. And then they sort of hit like 45 and it was like, oh, I didn't realize they had a doctorate, in Eastern philosophy. Yeah. These are like extremely smart people who I think saw a system that they could sort of parody. It was like, we sort of need to turn this thing on its end and turn it into something else. But I think what we see now is we don't see people getting into rock, getting into music, getting to this idea of the rock and roll lifestyle and then hitting the turbulence, hitting the, now I've got money, now I've got fame. What we really have is we have people who are strictly looking for the money and fame. Not as if we didn't have rock stars who were doing that, but there was always this aspect of craft behind it, right?
There's a couple.
It was, people looking to be Eddie Van Halen, people looking to be Steve Vai, God bless him, people looking to be these virtuosos, and putting in the time. They put in the work. They really did. They put in the work. And what we see right now is we see people who are, they're doing 22-second, freestyle rap on YouTube, and they're getting signed, and then they're, playing the fucking Super Bowl. It's, not that I don't find value in that industry. I think that there's value there. I think that the system just keeps working to cheapen it till there's really nothing left.
Even worse, we've got stuff like that Catch Me Outside girl. Why is she a millionaire? Why are we?
Because she took her clothes off on that one website.
Why are we promoting stupidity? No, she was a millionaire, I think, before that. Because after that whole thing, she got like this record contract and like had some internet celebrity even before she turned 18 and showed her boobs on OnlyFans.
So obviously there's been a huge turn in what the 80s represented musically, but let's also look at the fact that the 80s gave us probably some of the biggest benchmarks in movies. We're still trying to capture that lightning in a bottle, and we just can't do it. I mean, this is all right. Exactly. The idea.
That was 77, bro.
No. This was 1980.
But the idea that we had Empire Strikes Back, that we had Return of the Jedi, that we had Raiders, Temple, and Last Crusade. The fact that we have all these films, the fact we had Gremlins, the idea that we had, and even some of the bigger ones, like, I still fucking love Top Gun. And no matter how homoerotic it gets, and it gets a little more every time you watch it.
You just pause it at the volleyball.
Well, they're so sweaty. Like, I just pause it, I crank up the air conditioning. I'm like, cool off, guys. But we do have these films that, even the films that are more cult films that didn't quite, become blockbusters. The Last Starfighter, the films, Dragon Slayer, we had some fantastic movies in the 80s that held up extremely well.
Val Kilmer and Tom Hanks.
Oh, God, real genius.
You had real genius.
Oh, God,
Splash.
Bachelor party. Let's have a bachelor party with chicks and guns and booze and fire trucks.
What do you call you, Nick the Dick?
I think Tom Hanks was goddamn funny in a lot of those movies.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Man with One Red Shoe. Look back at, you had, not just, you had the Ghostbusters, 1 and 2, right? You mentioned Raiders 1, 2, and 3. You had, all these different like little pop-up movies too that were, horror. The horror movies in the 80s, they set the table for everything we're watching now.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, I think during the 80s, there was a horror movie for like literally every holiday that there was. And I think we started coming up with more, we came up with more holidays so we could have more horror movies. Like, I'm surprised there's not a National Donut Day horror movie. Or there probably is, and you probably know about it, and I don't.
And again, you know what I'm waiting for, and I'm surprised it probably has been done. It probably just hasn't sort of crossed our desks yet. But make like a tree and leave. This holiday, it's your Arbor Day. And we have like we would create horror films for every holiday.
I believe I worked on one of those movies. It was Trees 2, The Root of All Evil.
That could be an Arbor Day tradition. But stuff like, but My Bloody Valentine, April Fool's Day. If there was a holiday that we could spin the time with the horror film, we'd make that horror film.
What was it like? There's like Santa's Sleigh?
Yeah, Santa's Sleigh. I was going Black Christmas.
Silent Night, Deadly Night. We also had a slew of, Christmas themed horror, but not only were they horror films that, I mean, undoubtedly, it was part of a marketing ploy, but they were also quite good.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then my annual Christmas movie, John
Okay,
Carpenter's
yeah,
The
we had the
Thing.
Thing in the
Yep.
80s. I mean, the fucking John Carpenter, horror renaissance, Prince of Darkness. Well, I mean, the Halloween sequels. I mean, let's face it, the 80s
Yeah.
really was the staple of Halloween, even though it debuted in the previous decade, because that was really when it hit. I think really hit for a lot of mainstream audiences when the franchises picked up steam.
The
Yeah,
Nightmare on
Oh,
Elm Street
yeah.
Nightmare on Elm
franchise.
Street and Friday the 13th, once those hit, people went back that didn't know about Halloween, but went back and found that from the other two. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yep.
You just had so many great horror movies that are
And you
still.
go back, I mean, like you hit on it, you too, with the soundtracks. Remember Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream
Dokken,
Warriors?
hells yeah.
And I mean, like you could not turn on MTV when MTV used to play music. You could not turn on MTV for like a 6-month span and not see Don Dokken doing the capturing it from the gods and bringing it
Exactly, because that's what you do when you're a dream
That
warrior.
is why that's still my favorite Dawkins song. I don't care
Oh,
what
here's
you
what
say, Rob.
in. No, I am a Dokken fan. If I have everything they've ever done on my iPhone here, on my iTunes. That's probably the one that gets played more. Alone Again and that are probably the two that get played the most.
I just love the fact that, and these are some of the lyrics from that very poignant song from the Dream Warrior soundtrack, Dream Warriors. When I close my eyes, I realize he comes that way. This was largely lost on the 80s fans at the time, who would look at that and go, holy shit. Look at all the dream rape that's going on in this song. Well, we also had the top 10 video countdown on MTV.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And there was Friday night videos that I had to watch because we didn't have MTV because I lived out in the sticks where they didn't have
We had
cable
USA
yet.
Up All Night.
So NBC have Friday night videos at midnight on Friday, or it was like 11:30 or something. Me and my brother would set the VCR to record it. That's actually how I discovered Dio, because they had the Last in Line video.
Oh, that was oh my God.
Started off with that soft little riff and the kid ride the bicycle. Me and my brother watching like, oh, this is gonna be stupid.
Then all of a sudden you're on a rooftop and
next
Vivian Campbell's just riffing.
He's not on the rooftop. He's in the elevator going down. This stuff's trying to get into the elevator to get him.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking Rainbow in the Dark.
And then me and my brother are like, wait, what's going on? And we backed it up and watched it from the beginning. We were just like, that's so
And how can we forget Headbanger's Ball?
Yeah.
120 minutes.
The fact that we had a 2 hour, and let's face it, it was really the equivalent of a live show, right? Yeah.
Ricky Rockman.
Rick Rockman, yeah. And also, there is a video from the 80s. I've been racking my brain to try to figure out what it was. Maybe one of you guys can help, or somebody that's listening knows this. I want to say it was Rick Springfield, but I'm not positive. But he was like trapped in this UFO, and there are all these aliens, and they're shooting lasers, and he had these handcuffs, and he holds his hands up, and just as the laser shoots, and he breaks free, and I cannot remember what it was.
That's a deep cut, man. That's not ringing a bell for me.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Man, hopefully somebody that's listening will reach out to me and say, I know what that song is.
Do you remember when Thriller hit MTV?
That gave me nightmares. I was at my aunt's house. We were down in the basement, and the floor in my aunt's house was very creaky. The upstairs floor, we were in the basement. That came on, and I watched that, and it blew my mind. And then I was like terrified of that basement whenever the floorboards in the ceiling would creak. It scared crap out of me every time I was down there, and I did not like being in that basement after that.
Sorry, we went back to music from movies, but
Rick Baker doing the effects for that. It
Yeah.
doesn't, as far as videos, it doesn't really get much more cinematic than Thriller.
No, and it's two just before COVID. Um, we did every year we do this thing called Museum of the Dead here in Rochester at the Memorial Art Gallery, and they do like a Halloween party to raise money for the art gallery, and they did like a dance mob in the middle of this Halloween party, and they had people come in and do the entire Thriller, dance moves and everything to
That's
this. It
great.
was amazing to see it again.
Um,
Yeah. It was like it. Yeah, it was like so amazing. Like the time, MTV playing music videos
Yeah.
yeah,
and
that was the
like
first 14 years of MTV's existence.
hating hating the Cars song Magic because like for an entire summer, if that was on like all the time, and you're like, people, he's not really walking on water. There's like a plastic cube in the pool, and he's walking on that. And like, come on, the Cars have like a whole bunch of other songs besides this one. You don't have to play this one all the time,
And then they went to playing "You Might Think" ad
right?
nauseum.
But what we saw again that I do believe that we've lost is we really don't have event music, we still have event movies. I'm glad that we still have that.
Yeah, yeah. Like Avengers Endgame was like the biggest event movie I think of our
But let's
lifetime
face
at
it,
this point.
streaming television, even though I do love the fact that we have, I mean, we do have more genre television, and I mean sci-fi, horror, fantasy, even just thrillers. We have more genre television now than we had in the culmination of years on television. So for that, thank God that we have all this entertainment to choose from. But we really don't have a lot of event television anymore.
No, no, the whole "Who Killed Laura Palmer"
Oh,
thing.
the
Never
Stephen
see anything
King
like that again.
miniseries. I would wait
Yeah,
with bated
And
breath
who shot Jr.
for the Stephen King miniseries that would come out.
Oh, I remember like freaking out because it was going to be on, and I had to decide which VHS tape to put a band-aid over the little broken tabby thing to be able to record over what was on there. And I'm like, where's the Scotch tape? Where's the bucket? I'll get a band-aid.
I remember waiting, literally as if my life depended on it, for V to come out after seeing the trailers on TV.
Oh yeah.
And that was built up to be an enormous event. That was an enormous TV event. That was something, the production value, they had pooled so many resources into V that it was just, I mean, it was heavily, heavily promoted. I could not wait for V.
Yeah.
There was just so much. And I really don't think it has anything to do with my youth. I mean, and if it does, it's a little bit, because I still get very excited about things today. Like, I have as much
So
of my childhood enthusiasm today as I did back then.
so speaking of V, because me and you are both like just horror movie loving
yeah.
children. Did it blow your mind as well when you found out that Freddy Krueger
Oh, of
was
course.
also Willie?
Of course. I mean, especially because here was a guy that once he started getting those Nightmare on Elm Street paychecks, I mean, that guy loved the genre. He was an unabashed lover of getting paid to scare people, and he embraced it. Here was a guy that would attend premieres in full makeup.
Yeah. And apparently he lives like 10 miles
Really
from me.
interesting. Well, I mean, you probably have a lot of people living 10
he
miles
lives.
from you.
Yeah, that I don't.
Just outside that zone that the judge.
Right? Yeah.
But I guess he lives in Laguna Beach, and I have a friend of mine, my friend JP, say he ran into him at a bar down there.
But the things that we have like that, I mean, we can look back and we can find stories of England, crashing a premiere in full makeup. We can find stories of the authors being there, and and now it's just it's strange because there's like we feel that segregation even more, I think, between us and our icons. And I think we're inundated with pictures and clips, because we have such access to the internet. And back then, even though we put them on a pedestal, it seems like we could get closer to them by reading about them and then sort of, chasing these little pieces of fandom here and there.
Oh, the remember like when like all right, I remember like going to the comic book shop on Tuesdays and Thursdays for specific comics. But do you remember when Fangoria would come out?
Oh yeah.
The 15th of every month there was a new Fangoria. And like I would pedal my ass down to the local drugstore where they had the magazine rack on the 15th, slap my 75 cents down on the counter and go home and be immersed in like the made up stories around the
I mean, I would haunt like our local pharmacies waiting for it to come out. Like I couldn't get enough of it. And now of course, we have the kind of accessibility that we've never had before. And again, I love the idea that we have this kind of connectivity, but let's face it, it's diminished the idea of events for us. It just really has. This idea of ceremony and ritual is almost completely gone.
There was a video game back in the 80s called Dragon's Lair.
Yeah. Don Bluth produced game, actually.
Yeah.
I remember when that game like first came out. I had one of my best friends in the world, Art. He like was one of the first people I knew that could play that whole game.
It was extremely hard.
Yeah, but how much money did he put into it before he could get to the?
Not much.
That was not this guy could do on the first go.
No, this guy like
and Space Ace too, the other Don Bluth
like
game.
Yeah,
right. Art was like this, video game savant, and he figured it out probably within a couple of weeks. Maybe I don't know, 35 or 40 plays through, he had it. But I mean, when he would play, there would be a crowd. There'd be like 15 people around him, like as he's playing the video game. Now we have, like if you want to play a video game with your friends, you just put on a headphone or a headset with a microphone. And it's not like, I mean, we used to go into the arcade and you'd stick your quarter up on the marquee there. And then like you'd be like, my quarter's the one with George Washington's head going left.
Right, yeah.
And like you'd sit there and you'd like when you could find somebody that could get into Asteroids like 15 or 20 screens deep, or Centipede like 15 or 20 screens deep, there'd be a crowd around that person like watching them play this game. And it was like some of the games were just like Dig Dug. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many dollars I put in Dig Dug. or how many dollars I put into remember the sit down video games when those first came out?
Yeah.
Oh,
the tabletops.
I remember I was going to say,
I mean,
we had tabletop ones too, but I know what you're talking about, Rob. Yeah.
They had like the canopy, and like you went into Asteroids and you sat in like a little deep, and like you were, I'm so much, but I'm 15 years older than you guys, so they're 10 years older anyway.
So what was your game, Rob?
Asteroids.
Asteroids
all day long.
Mark?
Loved that game.
Arcade era Tron.
Yeah?
Oh, great game, dude. Great game.
Yeah, I played the heck out of that one.
What about you?
I got really into like the Tecmo Capcom stuff, like in the mid 80s. And I was obsessed with a game called Karnov.
I know Karnov. I had that on my NES.
Yep.
Funny story.
8-bit. You were a little Russian guy in a fantasy world, and you would collect things similar to Mario. Only when you collected them, it would give you an ability. So if you saw like a little icon of like a scuba helmet, You needed to collect that to then get into like the water level. But really, you
So-
just spat fireballs at people for no damn good reason.
Funny story about that game that kind of ties all of this
I was also a big
together.
Pac-Man guy too, by the way. So
One day I was at the mall because mom took me up there because we had heard that somebody was at the mall, and ran into I was in the toy store, and we ran into Fred Curry, the drummer from Cinderella.
oh wow, yeah.
He was
I'm
in there
sorry.
looking at video games, and because Cinderella was in town, and my mom had heard that they were at the mall, so we got in the car and went to the mall just so I could try to meet him. And he was in there and looking at video games, trying to figure out what game he wanted to buy. And I was, a little video game kid, and talked him into buying Karnov. And I actually I wanted to get an autograph, but the only piece of paper I had was like this K's merchandise video game rental receipt, and he signed it back. I think I still have that.
Well, that
somewhere
has
in my
novelty.
house, right?
So
You
we,
remember KB Toys?
oh yeah,
yeah.
Mark and I both worked at a
both
KB Toys
there.
together.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you can imagine the bedlam
Oh
of
yeah.
Mark and I working at a KB Toys together.
And then was it Brenda with her hair and her boyfriend Disco Kid?
Well, they both had these hair helmets. It was so strange. And I mean, when I first saw her hair, I thought she'll never be evenly matched. Like, we've plateaued. There's no way that we're going to see someone else with this kind of one-piece uniform hair helmet. And then she introduced her boyfriend, and it was like, Mother of God.
hair, helmet, mullet.
I mean, it was one continuous wave.
Dude, you could drop a boulder on this woman's hair and it would not move.
Oh no, there was power. There was power in that hair. But the fact they both had it, yeah, KB Toys was fantastic. I know that there were a couple of like toy chains that I was very, very fond of when I was a kid. That I think, I'm sorry,
Circus World.
Circus World, exactly. That was another one. That was sort of like a mall fixture, right? There were a lot of Circus
Yeah.
Worlds in malls. Children's Palace was
Yeah,
another
about that.
chain, which I think ended up getting absorbed by Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Schwartz, FAO
Circus-
Schwartz,
Circus World got absorbed by KB.
right? And now we
We ha-
don't have anything.
My
Yeah,
friend,
yeah. Us.
my friend and I had this '80s mall discussion not long ago, and we were going through all the like. Remember, there used to be like like Hickory Farms actually had a store in the mall.
Oh yeah,
Like you could go into a Hickory Farms store at any time of the year, not just Christmas,
right.
and buy like the gift basket, the Hickory Farms gift basket. But there was Orange Julius, bro. Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and like
Wiener
There was-
schnitzels.
Yeah.
there, like Friendlies. Even
Schnitzels all
Friendlies
over
is gone.
here.
Yeah.
Standalone out here. They're all over the place out here, though.
What
Who's
are?
That.
They're schnitzel.
Damn.
Yeah. You have to go out there and visit
Yeah.
just for that.
Just for the Wiener Schnitzel. Yeah, we might call you when we're there. We don't know, but definitely
Maybe.
for the Wiener Schnitzel.
If you bump into us at one of them,
You better.
That's
It's like
yeah.
2 blocks away from me.
Like, don't
so-
think we won't go to that one, but don't think anything of it if you see us. And one of the other area Wiener Schnitzels.
no, so we had this like '80s mall discussion. It was like every mall had like the Chess King
Yeah.
and Carousel,
Oh yeah.
and there was what was the other one? There was oh god, I can't remember right now. Like it wasn't Tower Records. What was it? It was the record store.
Sam Goody.
Yep.
Sam Goody. In my town, like we had a small record store called All Wilk Records in the Cedar Knolls
We
Mall.
had Camelot
in-
Music.
in-
That was another small chain.
Yep, that's another one. And like as a kid going into Spencer's and like finding like the adult section of Spencer's and be like,
I still giggle like that when I wander into the adult section of Spencer's.
but I mean, like,
Even though we can
It
go
was a
into
whole
stores that
different-
are totally comprised of those items now.
The Smithers gotten a lot more adult in the recent years
Oh,
too.
yeah.
It didn't used to have.
But like going to the mall was, it was like
Not
you know,
your
in the
dildo, but
80s.
a dildo.
Going to the mall in the 80s was it was, I mean, it was a ritual kind of a thing, you know. It was like to be old enough for your parents to drop you off and say, all right, I'll pick you up in a couple of hours. It was like the coming of age, you know.
Oh yeah,
And
me and Ash spent many hours in the '90s in the mall. We were both a couple mall rat kids.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, in the Midwest, I was like, what else are we going to do? It's either
Yeah,
that or drug addiction.
yeah.
Sometimes
or
both.
both. But do you remember there used to be you know, like at the arcade, uh 2 weeks or so before a new game would come out, there'd be an empty space on the
Oh, yeah.
floor.
Yeah,
And then there'd be like the,
be there and
yeah, ooh, what's coming up? You know, like what's gonna and there was a couple of games, and like we were talking about a minute ago, like favorite games. One of my first favorite arcade games was the one with the shark and the harpoon gun.
Oh, yeah.
And like it was like a video game like a video shark and this heavy like steel harpoon gun, and like you'd shoot the shark and the harpoon gun would go like in your
Oh,
hand,
yeah,
and
yeah.
like and there'd be
remember
like
that one.
blood splat on the screen and whatever, and there battle zone where you put your face up to the
Yeah.
little
Oh, yeah,
thing, and
or
everybody got pink eye because everybody else was putting their face up to it,
Of course.
you know, and controlling the tank, and you
what
know,
was the one with the submachine gun? The is Operation Wolf.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Operation.
Yep. There was a lot. Oh my God, all those games. But it was different. I mean, now it's like you walk into, you know, any place that has video games and there's 5,000 games,
Yeah.
you know, and it wasn't, you know, as much as it sounds stupid, like going to the arcade was a social experience.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
you told your friends, you know, oh, what are you doing on Saturday? I don't know, man. I got a couple lawns I got to cut, and I got this and that. All right, well, you know, can you get your bike and, you know, meet me over at the mall at like 5 o'clock? And you're like, yeah, 5:30 in the arcade. We'll meet at the Pac-Man game,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever.
We'll meet in Jolly
Well,
Chester.
yeah. Then you go to the food court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You grab a slice of pizza, and you know,
Well,
get grease all
support.
over your shirt.
I mean, and now we're also seeing, because remember, almost all movie theaters, the Cineplex was attached to a mall.
Yeah.
And we're not even.
And there were video games.
Yeah. And we don't even really see that anymore. We don't really see the Cineplexes. Well, I mean, here we're seeing them just, unfortunately, just dying, you know, and a lot of that
Yeah.
was just COVID sort of ravaging that. But yeah, we don't really see a lot. Now, I did visit a local mall, not too local, about an hour and a half away from me. And I was delighted to find two things there: an operational movie theater attached to the mall, where you could get into the theater from the mall. And second, they had an Aladdin's Castle arcade still there.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yes. So, and this is sort of also like one of those, like the town that time forgot. But we still have a few of those in the Midwest. Like
Oh, yeah.
occasionally, you know, you got to wait till it gets really misty, and then you'll see like an Edsel drive out of it, and then it's a quick window. You got to snap
There it
in
is.
there, and then you might find yourself, you know, playing the sit down tabletop version of Miss Pac-Man. But
All right. So now we're hitting 7 o'clock. I got to know. Okay, we'll each do this. Ash, what is the most '80s thing that you currently own in your collection?
oh God, Mark, that's like asking me if I like food. I could go on and on and on. There are a couple of standout pieces, okay? I'll tell you my standout pieces. Now one is 79 into 80, all right?
Right.
But I do have a complete Ray Dean Jumbo Shogun Warrior, which I absolutely love. That's one of my bigger pieces. I do now have aside from one piece, and it's the piece of that freaking elevator, I do have a complete Castle Grayskull in really good shape. Now, I won't tell you how many Castle Grayskulls I have, though, Mark, because it's
I know how
shameful.
many Castle Grayskull
It's
have.
shameful. I'm also looking at it.
I think you're nearing double digits.
I'm
on
also
Castle.
staring at a Snake Mountain here that I'm currently doing some work on. But lately, the things. Oh, I also have my Remco Universal Monsters, the 3 3/4 inch ones that had the vinyl playset.
Yeah.
You know that is supposed to serve as a carrying case for the action figures, but there's really no place to put them. So they basically just jumble themselves around and chip their paint inside that thing. But I will say, like, what I'm looking at now that I do absolutely love is that in 1984 LJN came out with an Indiana Jones line, and it's like there wasn't a whole lot of Temple of Doom merchandise, which was strange, because it came out and it had some really big numbers. But for years I was trying to get the Indy, and these are the 3 3/4 inch figures, the Indy and the
Right.
giant Thuggy. And I am looking at both of them now. So I don't have Mola Ram, although there is a current bid out for him. But
It's funny. We actually, me and my friends Andy and Kate, we actually just watched Temple of Doom Saturday night.
I love all three films still. I still love all three films.
I wonder if it's ever going to make a fourth one.
Now, if you guys, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, there have been a few people that have successfully done deep edits of Crystal Skull. Deep edits. And there's one where not only did they totally reconfigure the film, but they also added the soundtrack from Raiders in key places to try to give it the same tone. And I'm not going to say that it's great, because it's difficult to make a great movie out of that movie. But it's good. It's good. It seems like a worthy entry, and they've done some really interesting things with it that make. I mean, it's strange, but like it makes a lot more sense than what they did with it theatrically. So, if you ever get that bored, I will send you the files. I have like 4 or 5 fan edits. I was just wanting to find one that was watchable.
I think the only way to watch at, as Pam in our chat mentioned, is with Riff Tracks.
But there's okay. All right, Rob, you're up.
Yeah, Rob, your most 80s item? Right there.
It's a Nightlight AM radio. And the AM radio still works.
Oh, wow.
Nice. And how did you come across this?
Antique shop, believe it or not. But
Nice.
yeah. I mean, like I went and saw Ghostbusters, and there's a documentary on the Netflix, I think it was, called Ghost Heads.
Yeah.
I could very easily be on that, because I don't think there's a piece of Ghostbusters merchandise that over the years I haven't owned. I have every single Johnny Lightning Ghostbusters vehicle ever issued, including the Mexican issues. I have, which is actually right here, and it's pretty funny, but I don't know how good you'll see it, but it's a VW Beetle and a van.
Wow.
That is amazing.
This is the Mexican issue, MG Minis, Johnny Lightning vehicles.
That's impressive.
I mean, it's like by far and away, my favorite, absolutely my favorite movie. Probably, well, that's hard to say, because your favorite movie today might not be your favorite movie tomorrow or 10 minutes from now. But if it's one of those things that, like, man, Ghostbusters just, I watched Beverly Hills Cop the other day. Forgot how funny that movie was. I forgot that Eddie Murphy was funny.
There are just those films that
weird?
check all the boxes going down for you. I am a huge fan of John Borman's Excalibur. I think I will watch that film every time it's on.
Mhm.
You know, well, plus, I mean, let's face it, Helen Mirren was, you know, she sort of still is, but, she was definitely in Excalibur. But great film. I'll watch it almost every time that it's on. Still extremely quotable. Now, Mark, as far as your 80s stuff,
Probably my favorite item that I have is it's a reissue. Let's start with that, but is this right here? I actually got it and grabbed it a little bit ago. Is this Devo box set of their
oh,
first
wow.
6 albums. Yeah, I picked this up a few months ago. Actually,
Are we not men?
exactly. And what's cool about this, I'll pull this out, is that the vinyls are all, it has all the original inserts. There's like order forms to order your suit and your hat, but the vinyl itself is the color to match the color theme of the album.
At least we're getting that vinyl
I-
resurgence. I mean, that is something that I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah. My only problem with the vinyl resurgence is now you got to listen to assholes with skinny jeans and suspenders and ironic t-shirts with slouchy hats going, it sounds so much better on vinyl, bro.
Yeah, F those
Yeah.
guys.
Okay, it does sound better on vinyl. I'm not going to argue with you, but see, here's the problem, asshole. You didn't have vinyl back in the 80s when you had to put 14 pennies on the
Yeah.
fucking arm. Otherwise, like
Those would be
every time
skipped
there was a
all over the-
scratch, you'd skip 35 seconds of the song. So I
Right.
don't want to hear
Well,
it.
right. Their opinion is not histrionic.
Right.
I mean,
And what they're saying sounds better on vinyl is, it could.
Yeah,
nice.
Oh.
but this is great because it's got, if I can get this out of here,
Liner notes.
Yeah.
it's got, no, this is an order form.
No, but I mean, even just
Yeah.
liner
Yeah.
notes on an album.
And then this one, the album is potato colored.
I mean, pre-internet, wasn't that usually the only way we could get our hands on the actual lyrics to the songs?
Yeah.
That was
You're that singing the wrong lyrics for days, and then one day the internet comes along and completely ruins your life.
okay. So since we're on collectibles and we're definitely heading into the middle part of the second hour here. So maybe one thing to sort of cap the night off, since we're talking about collectibles, things from the 80s, since we've talked about the things that we have, what's that one thing that you don't have that to you is so symbolic of the 80s that you would love to have it?
When I was a kid, they had these commercials for these monster toys. And like the whole thing was, and they glow in the dark, and I wanted them so bad. I was like the classic Universal monsters: Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
And I wanted these toys so bad. And for Christmas, when I went to see Santa, I told Santa I want these monster figures. And I never got the monster figures for Christmas. I was so
how
mad
big
at
were the
Santa.
figures, Mark?
They're probably about like 5-6 inch figures.
Or
maybe.
were they same size as Star Wars?
They're a little,
little
bigger,
bigger,
than
huh?
Star Wars.
Because I have the Rimcos
I think
that
might
did
have
glow
been
in the
what it
dark.
was. I bet
So,
that what it
so I don't know if this
was.
is gonna send you into a full-fledged flashback, but hold on just one second,
All
and I'll
right.
just scoot my chair over here because this right here. Oh shit! I just knocked the Wolfman over. So this is
That
the glow-in-the-dark
This one.
Dracula.
those are the ones
Yeah,
that I wanted so dearly as a child,
yeah.
and I told Santa I want them, and that fat bastard did not bring me those toys.
So, I mean, currently, what I'm looking at right here on the shelf is Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman all from that set. I do not have the Mummy or the Creature from the Black Lagoon yet. But they're pretty awesome, Mark. Just letting you know.
I wanted those more than anything. You have no idea.
Now, is Rob still on with this?
I am. I'm having. We are on backup power here. We lost power here for a minute.
Oh wow.
So now we're good.
So what's your one thing, Rob? So we know that with Mark, it's the thing that I have, which I'm. At least you know that I have them. You know, you can. You know, whenever you visit, you can enjoy them.
Oh, I will.
Is it now? Does it have to be a collectible, or can be? What is? I mean, what are the parameters? What are my outside parameters?
Something that you wanted in the '80s but never got. Aside from getting laid.
I was gonna say, here's a hand job story. I know it.
I'm 10 years older than you guys. I was already in college in the '80s, bro.
It makes it even sadder.
Now that you say it. To be completely honest with you, a Steinberger. Bro, I wanted a Steinberger so bad. I don't know why. It was like something about like the cool look of that, you know, like watching Geddy Lee play one too was a big deal. And you know, I'm not gonna lie, if there was a Steinberger that like showed up relatively decent condition, and I might have to swing. Might have to get it. But I definitely like the musical instruments back then, you know, like everybody now has like their own, you know, signature or whatever, but like the first time Steve Vai came out with the guitar with the handle in it.
Oh yeah.
And
the 7-string Ibanez.
George Lynch.
There's its own carrying case.
And George Lynch had the GTR.
Yeah.
He had the skeleton guitar from the Dream Warriors video.
Yes.
Yeah, I missed the instruments from the 80s. I really do.
Yeah.
Like I remember one of the bands I was in the 80s, I had black and red parachute pants, a black and red parachute vest.
Ooh.
The same material that made the pants, the vest.
Oh man.
And I had a single pickup red Jackson that was like, oh, couldn't get more like bullshit 80s. That's what I miss. I miss I'd have to say if one thing back in the 80s, a Steinberger when they first came out. I was just infatuated with that instrument.
And how about you, Ash?
Mine was sort of a big ticket item. I always wanted the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier. Like that, it was massive. I mean, and
it was like,
I remember
it was huge. And I just remember, a friend of mine having it. And it was like no big deal. He was a fairly wealthy kid too, so it was like it was no big deal that he had this. And I would always try to like convince him, like, you don't understand the novelty of what you have. None of us have the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier. We all want it. We pore over the pages in the Sears catalog every Christmas, and we still can't have it because it just fell outside the range of like practical gift giving. You know, the thing was like $129, which today isn't huge. But for one gift for a child, you know, especially during the 80s, like that's a pretty massive price point. And it was huge.
Yeah.
Like you had to have the space to accommodate it, not just the money to buy it. But then there's, you know, it's like, well, if we had money for a dog, no, because then you got to feed it. Then you got to, you know, it's like, it was literally like a pet. You had to have all of this other stuff lined up in order to have the aircraft carrier. So it was that one thing that, you know, the stars just never aligned because there was just way too much, you know, associated with it. But man, I wanted that thing badly. And
a special mention from Brenda in our chat. that the thing that she would wish she had from the 80s is she wants her 1987 IROC convertible Camaro again.
Yeah, I didn't mind driving that thing either. The few times that I got to drive it, one of which is when I wrecked it. I remember that fateful night.
Favorite horror movie? I don't know, favorite horror movie from the 80s.
Oh, jeez.
You gotta pick one.
Oh man, there's, you know, I have to go with probably, you know, The Thing is in my top 5, and it never sort of leaves the top 3. It's always sort of there, but
Is it because you don't want to spend the rest of the winter tied to a fucking couch?
exactly. And I always wait for that line too, because I mean, it's just the best delivery. I'd rather not spend this entire winter tied to this fucking couch. Absolutely love that film. You know, I did get to see it, you know, on the screen in the theater. We rented out one of the movie theaters here and had a play. But yeah, no, I absolutely love The Thing. Like, it's one of those films I'll watch all the time, anytime that it's on. For me, there's so much that just holds up so well in it. I mean, there are other films that I absolutely love that are very much like, to me, that transcends the 80s. Even though it's a staple of 80s horror films, like, it doesn't ring so much of the 80s as some others do. But with it being in the 80s is probably my favorite. But God, there are so many. And even the ones that maybe aren't necessarily horror but have a place in my heart, like, well, 1986's Lady in White, for example, is a film that I still love. And I still, you know, rewatch to this day. And films even from later on, you know, 87 with Hellraiser, The Monster Squad. I mean, God, there's just so many that fall. Also to fall into that strange horror comedy camp. You know, that we had some great horror comedies. Night of the Creeps, for example, from 86 is a great, you know, Fred Dekker film.
Return of the Living Dead 1 and 2.
Huh?
Return of the Living Dead 1 and 2. Great.
Well, again, that first one had a killer soundtrack to it.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we have in there? We had The Damned, we had The Exploited, we had The Cramps, some great 70s to 80s punk bands on that soundtrack. Just great songs, absolutely great songs. So yeah, that's sort of where we're going to movies. I absolutely love The Thing, even though there are just tons of rewatchable horror films. I mean, when we talk about horror, it really is the 80s. I mean, everything just sort of shined.
If I had to pick one, and it's actually a really easy pick for me. The one that started it all, got me into all the weird horror stuff that I've been into my whole life. The original Nightmare on Elm Street is where it all began for me.
Yeah. Okay. I have kind of a one that it's a 1 and 1A, and they're both kind of probably not mainstream what most people would pick. But my number one is definitely Serpent in the Rainbow.
Great film. Yeah.
There was just something about that movie that just, like, you know, and I read the book. I had to get the book after I watched the movie because it's like loosely based, very loosely based, but still, I mean, Zeke's Moak, the you know, when he's, you know, the head of the Tauntaun Makut, and he's, you know, I want to hear you scream, Dr. Allen. Okay.
Yeah, there's some truly chilling stuff in that film.
And, you know, it's one of those things where, like, you know, I saw that movie, and I think it was like 89 that movie came out, and I was like, wow, this is different. This is something new. And it kind of opened up that door. And if you remember, there's a whole bunch of movies like that started following behind right after that movie came out. And, you know, that was one of those things that, like, and the other one that, for just one little scene, Pet Sematary, my favorite Stephen King book, absolutely my favorite book, probably. But
that's on that route.
Huh?
A lot of accidents on that road.
Yeah. Well, I lived up in Maine for a while, and the guys that were up there really, they had that accent, and then Lithgow comes along and totally fucks that up. But anyway, um, there was the scene where um, Gage comes back and he's under the bed and he cuts Fred Gwynn's Achilles,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh,
Watch.
oh, it's like you could feel it in the movie theater. That was, but again, it was, definitely Serpent in the Rainbow for me. It was that weird, like when the snake comes out of her mouth, like the bride skeleton and the snake starts coming out of her mouth in the dream. And, just so many weird little, like trippy, scenes in that movie. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. Back in the day when I was, our neighbor was over and watching The Shining with my parents, and I was too young to watch, so I was regulated in my room. They're like, go upstairs. You're not old enough to watch this. So apparently, I didn't realize what it was or what was going on. But at one point, I thought it would be funny to drop a book from upstairs. Right behind the chair where our neighbor was sitting, and it happened to be at like one of the most tense parts of the movie, and she screamed and nearly jumped through the roof.
Of course that happened.
And still to this day, King says that he hates that movie.
Oh, he can hate it all day long. It was still a great movie.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, you got to take the book out of the movie.
Yeah.
Doctor Sleep was another one where you got to take the book out of the movie.
I enjoyed that
because
too.
it's the follow up. But I mean, oh God, like when Scatman is like he shows up and Nicholson buries the axe in his chest like with that and like, oh my God, it's like, oh shit, Scatman dies,
Right.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert if anybody hasn't seen that movie on cable every friggin' day. Like I guarantee you right now, somewhere in the United States on some cable station, Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, The Shining, or Weekend at Bernie's is playing. One of those movies right now is
always playing. Now, we could talk about the 80s all night. However, we do have to say, you're not going to be with us next week, are you, Rob?
I am not. I'm sorry. I'm taking a quick little vacation just to get away. We've been doing a lot of home remodeling, been under a lot of stress here with some work things and some life things, and need to get away. So I'm taking a long weekend and getting away.
Rob, you have a laptop. You can take that with you and do the show on the road.
You need a night away from everything, seriously. Sometimes you need that total reset, and that is completely understandable.
They don't let me have internet on the airplane.
So we'll be introducing Rob's replacement next week. Anyways.
Perfect. That makes me feel
I want
better.
to thank everybody who listened in tonight. We had a great time talking about the 80s. And again, we could talk about the 80s all night if we really wanted to. Tune in next week. Who knows what's going to happen? We're going to try to get a guest. We've been trying to get some of our guests to come back. Good luck for us. And we want to wish everybody a great night. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.